with ever-increasing threats to our individual privacy, infrastructure, financial security, public safety, there are calls that are growing for a Manhattan-style project for cyberspace for the 21st century. For more on that, we welcome back Marc Goodman. Marc is the author of Future Crimes, Everything is Connected, Everyone is Vulnerable, and What We Can Do About It. Hi, welcome back.
Thank you.
We had a good conversation yesterday, and we talked a little bit about this, but I just want to start off again with this. We talked about new technology being in the hands of criminal organizations. Remind us, though, what threat the technology itself poses.
Well, technology itself is neutral, right? Fire was a technology. It was the first technology. It could keep you warm at night, it could cook your meal, but you could also burn down the village next door with it. So it's all how we use the tech. The tech, it can be great, but it can also be hacked by those who want to come out after us. And the fact of the matter is, technology is invading every aspect of our lives. If you get in an automobile today, any modern automobile has 250 computer chips in it. Those can be hacked, right? If you're using GPS on your phone or your car, that can be hacked. So it's your mobile phone, it's your refrigerator, it's your microwave, it's all computers, and unfortunately, they're all hackable.
Okay, your book's called Future Crimes, and I think if we think about future crimes, we think of AI, artificial intelligence. I think the concept that most people have of AI, sort of like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. How has our definition of AI evolved since that?
Well, most people, going back to the HAL 9000, one of the things we actually had on the book is this little HAL 9000 I here, so that people would kind of get the reference. And AI has actually come a long way. Most people use AI every day and they have no idea. If you're on Facebook, you use AI. If you use Amazon, if you use Netflix, those are all examples of artificial intelligence. You don't actually see all the updates from all your friends on Facebook, okay? They actually curate what they show you because there would just be too much information otherwise. When you buy a book on Amazon and watch a film on Netflix, they say, if you like this, then you'd like that. That's an example of artificial intelligence. When you're told how to drive left or right on your GPS, that's all artificial intelligence. So AI is all around us, but it too can be hacked.
Okay, I want to play a clip. This is from Silicon Valley. I don't know if you've ever seen this HBO show.
Yes.
This is a guy named Jared in the show, his interaction with the driverless car. So take a look at this.
I'm going to 5230 Newell Road, Palo Alto.
Route guidance calibrated. Distance to destination 4.6 miles. Buckle up, please.
Okay.
Enjoy your ride. Destination override. New destination 1 Gregory Drive, Air-a-Lawn. Distance to destination 4,126 miles. Enjoy your ride.
What's happening? I'm sorry, what? Mr. Carr?
Okay, Marc, that was funny, scary. How realistic, though, is that kind of scenario?
Well, theoretically, it's quite possible. As I mentioned, there are a number of chips in our car, and those can be hijacked. It's been shown to happen. So somebody literally remotely could turn on your airbag, turn on your radio, your windshield wipers, because your car, one way or the other, is increasingly connected to the net. As far as those self-driving cars, that's the next generation of both robotics and artificial intelligence. So there have been several studies that show, even though we may not be seeing them every day in downtown Toronto or Montreal, self-driving cars are definitely coming 20 years from now. The concept of a pizza delivery boy bringing the pizza to your house will be out the window. UPS, FedEx, all of those cars will be self-driven. And it'll all be run by AI and the robotics operating the car. So that can be overridden.
Okay, you're scaring me. And we talked about before we started taping tonight about we're going to try and leave on an optimistic note. But let's stay with the pessimistic one just for a moment. What is the worst case scenario you can imagine involving AI?
So within the field of artificial intelligence, there's something called artificial general intelligence. The type of AI that you and I were just talking about was what they call narrow AI. Recommending a film or a book is narrow AI. But artificial general intelligence is the AI that will run the world. According to Ray Kurzweil, that may come 2029, 2035. We talked yesterday about Moore's Law and the doubling processing power of computing. Well, it turns out that every time that doubles, a computer gets smarter and smarter till eventually it will equal the human brain. But what happens the year after? it doubles again. So then that computer is twice as smart as a person, and then 4 times, and 8 times, and 16 times. And so within short order, you have a computer that has the processing power of the entire human species on the planet. And we frankly don't know what that will look like. That's called the technological singularity.
Okay, and yesterday we also talked about criminal organizations, criminals in general being 2, if not 25 million steps ahead of traditional law enforcement. Are criminal organizations using AI?
Yeah, they're using AI in 2 really interesting ways. We talked yesterday about crimeware and software that commits crime. So a lot of those hacking, that's all scripted. It's a computer program that runs algorithms to carry out the crime. And we're even seeing narrow AI coming up in really interesting ways. There was a case that broke in Florida in the United States where a young boy was a freshman at the University of Florida. He had a roommate and he had a girlfriend. He and his girlfriend broke up and she started dating the roommate. So what did he do? The only obvious thing, he murdered his roommate, right? I say jokingly, but not joking at all. He actually ended up committing the murder of his roommate because of the love triangle. Now this 18-year-old boy, that was his first homicide, and he had a problem. What was he supposed to do with the body? So he eventually figured it out. The police thought this kid might be involved. They came in and they arrested him. They seized all of his computers. And one of the things that they seized was his mobile phone, an iPhone. And they did a forensic analysis of it. And what did they see? Turns out after this young 18-year-old boy had committed the homicide, didn't know what to do with the body, he pushed a button and asked Siri, Siri, how do I get rid of a dead body? And Siri replied, or he said, what's the best place to hide a dead body? And Siri replied, swamps, mines, and dumps. So if you ask Siri where to hide a dead body, Siri will give that reply.
Wow.
So that is an example of a kid, 18 years old, did the perfectly natural thing, asked Siri for help. So in future crimes, I say, you know, the future of crime, we used to know about Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde will be replaced by Siri and Clyde. Right? There will be elements of AI that organized criminals just because they're modern citizens will turn to for help committing crimes.
We're just going to pause for a minute because everyone is pulling out their iPhone right now and asking Siri where they can bury a body. Okay, you can do that after the program. Okay, I think currently people are worried not about AI, even though they should be, and it is affecting all of us, but more about sort of the kind of stuff we're told about every day. Don't share your address online, or don't share your credit card information. I want to bring up a graph. This is Canadian data. It's put out by the Canadian government's Privacy Commissioner. So this is what they ask people to sort of weigh in on how concerned they are about posting information about themselves. So location information, all told, sort of 84%, if you add those first 2 columns, very concerned, somewhat concerned. 84% of Canadians concerned. Contact information, 88% of Canadians concerned about sharing that kind. Photos and videos, 84%, something we all do on Facebook and other such social media things. Canadian data, but I'm wondering, you're an American, how concerned are Americans? Are we seeing an analogous relationship? Are they concerned about posting this kind of stuff online?
I think they are, but you opened up your question with a brilliant but subtle point. Is you said a study according to the Canadian National Privacy Commissioner. We don't have one of those in the United States. The United States is one of the very few countries in the world that does not have a national level, cabinet level officer responsible for privacy. So they have them in the UK, throughout the EU, there's the European Directive on Data Privacy. So in the United States, it's very much the company's rule, and they can keep your data as long as they want, do with it whatever they want. So I think Americans are concerned, and they have even more reason to be concerned because they don't have a privacy commissioner looking out for them.
Dare I ask why?
I think it's business interests, quite frankly. It's, you know, it would be considered potentially as anti-business to step in and do that. But as they've seen in other countries and the European Union, they view data privacy and privacy in general as a human right. And that's not clear under U.S. law at this point.
Okay, you know what's going to happen after this program is my parents are going to call me from Saskatchewan, and they watch the program, and they're going to say, Pia, is it safe to go on Facebook? Is it safe to go on Google or whatever? Is it safe to look at your kids' photos? They're going to ask me that. Do my parents and all the rest of us, the average person who surfs the web, spends some time on social media, does a little banking on the web, do we have reason to be, I don't know, deeply concerned, fearful of criminal organization, of crime?
Right. What I would say is that cyberspace is new, right? It's only been around for like 20 years, and most of us really have only started using it at this level recently. we understand what physical safety looks like in the real world. For example, at least in the United States, maybe Canada here it's different, but in the United States, you don't go out at night and leave your front door open when you go to work. You don't park in front of the restaurant and leave your keys in the car and the ignition running. We know how to take those very common sense steps in real life. The challenge is most people haven't been taught how to do that in cyberspace. And so that's the difficulty. The good news is you can learn. There are steps that you can take that will vastly drop your cyber risk.
Okay, a lot of people in the real world, most people also don't go out and knowingly commit a crime. More people knowingly do commit a crime using the internet by illegally downloading things.
Right.
Many people do it. They know they're committing a crime. They know they're doing something illegal. Is there an inadvertent second crime they could be committing by doing that?
Yeah, so it turns out, according to the Interpol Secretary General, that there's quite a nexus between piracy and theft of intellectual property, and that funding both criminal organizations, but even terrorist organizations. The Secretary General of Interpol had testified before the U.S. Congress of the nexus, and we've seen any number of terrorist plots increasingly funded by cybercrime. So people might not know it, but the attack that occurred in Mumbai back in 2008, the 7/7 attack that occurred in London, and the 3/11 attack that occurred in Madrid, all one way or the other, were funded in part through cybercrime, whether it be telecommunications fraud or piracy of computer information.
Okay, wait. I just need to delve into this a bit more. So, person A, illegally downloading a movie.
Right.
You're saying there could be a line from that to a terrorist attack?
The Secretary General of Interpol has said,
but how does that line even work?
So what they do is all of these terrorist organizations need funding. Terrorist finance is a huge issue. Some of that money comes from wealthy donors, in particular Middle Eastern countries, and others of it comes from standard criminal enterprises. So they will run, the profit margins, as we talked about yesterday, are so great that if they need money to fund their terrorist operation, it's so easy to turn to cybercrime because the chances of getting caught are so low, and it's a quick buck.
Okay, you said just a few minutes ago that there's things we, the average people, can do to make ourselves safe. So one of the things would be that we're told to do, most of us don't do enough of, if at all, is use antivirus software programs. Is that enough to keep us safe?
Definitely not. One of the studies...
But worthwhile doing?
Probably worthwhile doing. One of the things, a study that I cite in Future Crimes is a meta-study that was done of 40 antivirus products. And, you know, new viruses are coming out all the time. There are several thousand new viruses released every day by the criminal underworld. And so they're coming out so fast, the antivirus vendors can't keep up. And in fact, some of them have said the era of antivirus is open. That era of antivirus is over. In that meta-study of 40 different antivirus programs, they found that their detection rate for new malware, new computer threats, in the first 6 months after the virus comes out was only 5%. That means 95% of the new viruses, these programs were not detecting. And in Future Crimes, I say, if your own body's immune system functioned like that, you'd be dead in 24 hours. So clearly, we need new and better tools.
Here's what I'm thinking might be the best solution, because what you're saying to me is that you do something that we all do in our everyday lives. We get on the internet, okay? You go on there. You might inadvertently be participating in something that's pretty bad without your own knowledge, and that there isn't, well, the available sort of security measures out there aren't so great. So I'm thinking it might just be better to live off the grid.
Right, so there's this call for the new techno-Amish, right, to go offline.
Is that what it's called, techno-Amish?
Yes, exactly. You hear about that sometimes, and the neo-Luddites. I'm not one of those people. I think technology is awesome. I wrote in Future Crimes a 6-step process, which I called the update protocol, and it was based upon a study from the Australian Ministry of Defence. If you take those 6 steps outlined in Future Crimes and follow them, you can reduce your cyber threat by 85%.
Okay, let's go through the 6.
Okay. Hopefully I'll spell this right.
Okay.
Update, the U. That means keep your computer software up to date. As we mentioned yesterday, it's riddled with bugs. People need to plug those holes. You know when you get an update on your computer that says, please update? That's the nice way of saying, your computer was unsafe until now. We've realized it and we need to plug this hole. So set all your updates for automatically updating for your browser, Flash, PDF, and on your phone. Update. P, is for password. We all hate passwords. The password must die, right? It's a really ineffective way. Nobody can remember them, but there are these things called password managers that people can use, and I recommend them because then you can create super long passwords. You only need to remember one master password. Don't use the same password across multiple sites. If you use your Facebook password to log into everything, instead of having one account compromised, you'll have them all compromised. So use a password manager, and I have specific recommended ones in Future Crimes because organized crime groups have actually created their own password managers to try to trick you to getting all their passwords.
Of course they have, yes.
Of course they have. D is download. Watch where you download from. We were talking about free movies, pirated films. If you're hanging around in the BitNet, in the BitTorrents, and downloading all of this data, then of course these free movies and films are riddled with malware. So watch where you download from. A, this is a big one and most people don't think about this. A stands for administrator. When you log onto your computer, get it new out of the box, you're asked to create a user account. Most of the time, in fact, all of the time, that standard account is considered an administrator account. What does that mean? As administrator on your own computer, you have maximum rights to change anything you want on the machine. 99% of the people run their computers at home in administrator mode. But if you do that and you accidentally click on a bad link or download a file and click on it, that means the malware embedded in there, the viruses can run automatically because you're the administrator. They have maximum permission. Instead, I tell people you'll need an administrator account on your computer, but never run your computer in administrative mode. Always run it with user permissions. This way, if you click on that download and it says when you want to open up a PDF, please enter your administrative password, that's because the PDF is infected. It's trying to change important system files. And now you have a heads up. You should not need an administrative password to open up a PDF. So run your computer in administrative mode. U, P, D, A. Yes, A is for administrator. T is for turn off. We all keep our computers at home on 24/7. If you just turned off your computer at night when you slept, that 8 hours it was offline, that's 8 hours it's out of the hands of criminals. You'd reduce your threat profile by 33%. The same is true on your mobile phone. By the way, if you don't want to turn off your computer, just turn off the Wi-Fi or take out the connection from the back. It works the same way. Same on your mobile phone. Most people walk around with Bluetooth on, Wi-Fi on, near-field communication, hotspots. All of those extra ports that you keep open are other ways for criminals to get in and to hack your device. Turn off the ports when you're not using them. And the very last one is E, which stands for encryption. If you use Windows or if you use Mac, there are built-in programs that will help you encrypt all of the data on your hard drive. This way, if you lose your computer or if it's stolen, it won't be readable by third parties. You can also use encryption to protect your data in transit. If you are at an airport, in a hotel, on a university campus, and you're using the open Wi-Fi, then you're connected to everybody else on that network and they can see what you're doing. So I was in my hotel here in Toronto using their Wi-Fi, and I was able to see the iTunes playlist of all the other guests on the floor, if you know what you're doing. So if you use a virtual private network or VPN, it's a piece of software, it'll encrypt all your data, and I definitely recommend doing that when you're on a public Wi-Fi hotspot.
Okay, so most people are going to say, yeah, sounds good. I'll turn off my computer every night or every couple of nights. And then you say things like VPN. I think, meh, I don't need to be worried about it.
Right. Well, you would reduce your threat by 85%. I had a friend of mine when I was a police officer, and she always used to leave little change in the car, right, in between the seats, and then she'd leave $1 there occasionally. And I said, don't do that, don't do that. And she said, if people need the money that badly, let them take it. Then one day I got a phone call from her. She was hysterical, cries like, they broke into my car, they smashed my window, they took all my stuff. And so, you don't have to do any of this, right? It's to protect yourself. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually really pretty easy to do. If you don't know how to do it, your kids or your grandkids will. The smart kid around the corner might be able to help you, right? There are ways to figure this out, and there are great ways to learn about this online. Okay,
we got about 10 minutes left. I want to switch gears. I want to read it's quite a lengthy quote. It's from your book. You've wrote it, but you're going to listen again, so our audience. Here we go. When it was discovered in 1939 that German physicists had learned to split the uranium atom, fears quickly spread throughout the American scientific community that the Nazis would soon have the ability to create a bomb capable of unimaginable destruction. Shortly thereafter, the Manhattan Project was launched, an epic secret effort of the Allies during World War II to build a nuclear weapon. From 1942 to 1946, the Manhattan Project clandestinely employed over 120,000 Americans, toiling around the clock and across the country at a cost of $2 billion. Those working on the Manhattan Project were dead serious about the threat before them. We are not. Okay? Is the threat of cyber insecurity an existential one?
It's existential in the sense that it threatens our way of life, right? So with a nuclear explosion, I'm not comparing a nuclear holocaust to the cyber threat, but if you think about all of the trappings of our modern society, the trains in Toronto, the financial markets, patient records are now all electronic patient records, the 911 systems, air traffic control. While we wouldn't all die, thank God, if all of that went off, there certainly would be loss of life, right, for one. And two, our way of life would fundamentally change, right? Most people today, you know, at least in the States and certainly in Silicon Valley, don't carry cash, right? There's no way to do financial transactions to buy stuff. So it would fundamentally alter things. And then when you look at these critical infrastructures, you know, power, gas, electricity, the access to clean water. Here's a perfect example. You know, our water at whether it be sewage treatment facilities or at clean water facilities, that's cleansed with chlorine and other chemicals. Hacking into one of those networks, you can change that chemical alteration of the water that comes out in the pipes. So while these risks are there, I think they are significant. And the reason why I mentioned the Manhattan Project was not for a militarization of cyberspace at all. I'm just saying that they faced a very big threat back in the day and they understood the threat.
Okay, let's talk about the money thing, because $2 billion what was put into the Manhattan Project.
Right.
What's the equivalent today? How much money would we need to put in?
You know, I'm not convinced that it would take that much money. I think certainly there would be a budget for it, but I think what it takes is somebody to convene this. This is not meant to be, nor could this be, an effort purely of any one government. It needs to be the effort of many governments, and more importantly, it needs to be the effort of the private sector, nonprofit organizations, NGOs, average everyday citizens. Again, I'm not calling for a military project. What I'm calling for is an intense effort underway to go ahead and fundamentally fix the architecture, the fundamental infrastructure upon which we're building our future society.
Okay, and within this context, who's the Oppenheimer in this picture?
It's a really good question. Who knows? It could be, you know, a 25-year-old kid in Chennai. It could be somebody who's 6 years old at Lawrence Livermore Lab. We don't know. But there's talent everywhere. And that's the beauty of it, right? We talked about criminals using crowdsourcing, but there are tremendous opportunities for the good guys to use crowdsourcing as well to help drive this forward. Two things that we can do that would also help is I talked about the creation of an X Prize for cybersecurity. When Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, most people don't realize that he didn't just do that. There was an incentive prize of $25,000 or $50,000 back then that drove him and a whole bunch of other aviators to come up with these innovative approaches to flight that got them across the Atlantic. I'm working with the X Prize Foundation in California to create up to a $20 million purse to create new forms of software, unhackable software, better software, better encryption to drive things forward. And I think we can do that with incentive competitions.
Okay, you talked about the State of the Union and President Obama, and as you see it, his non-commitment to getting ahead of this problem, this global problem. So is there an appetite, though, you think, more globally for greater cooperation between governments, between the private sector on cybersecurity?
There are some interesting examples of it, but they're at their very preliminary stages. Often these public-private partnerships, which is exactly what we need, break down because both sides speak two very different languages. So the government is happy to receive information from the private sector, and then the private sector says, what should we do to protect ourselves? And the government will come back and say, ooh, that's classified. We can't really tell you about that. So that is not a good public-private partnership model. I think we need better models. I call for the creation of a national cyber reserve corps. It could be global. But the fact of the matter is we will face a cyber disaster at some point in our future, right? Whether it be through an accidental failure where the systems just crash due to some sort of software bug, or through malware because somebody did it intentionally. The time to plan for that disaster is not during the disaster. It's not after the disaster. It's right now before the disaster. And if you live in the Midwest of the United States, you train and practice for tornadoes. If you're in California, you practice for earthquakes. Our whole society is becoming dependent on this technology, and we need to start thinking and planning for the eventuality that something might go wrong.
Okay, I made a promise the beginning of the show, about 20 minutes ago or so, that we would be optimistic.
Yeah.
So I want you to leave us, the viewer, myself, with an optimistic note, because you said there is one.
There are several. As I said earlier, I'm a huge proponent of technology. I think it is awesome. We'll bring 2 billion people out of poverty. We will educate the masses. We will have vast advances in healthcare. So there's a lot of positive for the tech, but it all comes down to how we use it. Even though some of the issues that we talked about seem daunting both personally and at the social level, we can fix this, right? We can definitely fix this. We know what's broken. We know what it will take to fix it. If you think about President Kennedy during the 1960s, he said, by the end of this decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. We did that. Right? I mean, just a few millennia ago, we were basically apes, and now we're putting a man on the moon. If we can solve that challenge, surely we can figure out, how to get rid of some of this malware that we have in our computing systems and build trustworthy computing and a much more resilient technological society.
And problems we ourselves created, so this should be hopefully easier to solve. Thank you, and thank you for leaving us with some optimism.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Pia.
it, Marc.
My pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.